Okay, so let's have a little look at, so I think it's, yep, it's 11 o'clock now. So Howard and Tom, you ready? We've got people on. Let me just get my chat box open so we can see. I'm just going to lower the hand there so we know if anyone else does that or no. And I'm also going to come off video as well, because let's face it, nobody wants to see that. And Tom is going to screen share because he's got the video, and that will allow Howard and I to then have a little look and interact with you more in the chat box. So the first clip, so we've got a few little clips here, and the first clip is of a multi-directional lane on a roundabout, and it's a spiral roundabout, and we're going to have a little watch of the clip. In this car, we are going to be, there are 4 or 5 exits, I can't remember off the top of my head now, but we are going to be turning right at this roundabout. And so our question to you is, where the lane splits between exit 3 and 4, we want to come off at the 4th exit. So where that lane splits, would you, first of all, when would you signal to come off? And that sounds like quite, we'll start with some easy bits. And secondly, as we're approaching the roundabout, should a right signal be on as we approach the roundabout in the first place? So let's have a little watch of the video. If you could hit play, Tom. We can watch it back if we need to. It's a little bit blocky for me. I don't know about anyone else, but it tends to smooth out in a few seconds. So you probably just noted the road sign and noticed we're in the Crawley Gatwick area. So now, would we be signalling right, considering the type of roundabout it is, the lane markings? Because if you follow it round, you'll notice that we've got the lane markings just naturally push us around to where we want to go, and it feeds us. This is the point now where you would offer a left signal. And would you? Because the lane naturally kind of goes straight, but it also could go left towards Gatwick as well. So Tom has said no signal on approach. Others have said yes. Does that mean I have asked you a couple of questions, so we need to clarify. Was that would you signal on the approach to the roundabout? That's the first question. Even though you're in a lane where it naturally kind of feeds you round to where you want to go. So Sandra said, I would signal left when you come off because there's an option to go straight ahead. Correct? Yep. Steve, I'd signal right on the approach to the roundabout. Okay. Howard, anything to add on this particular one?
I'm with Sandra. I think that you should treat it, any roundabout, whether it's a spiral roundabout with lights or anything else, should be treated as a roundabout and signal in the normal fashion.
Exactly. I mean, that's what we were discussing yesterday, wasn't it? How the highway code says that. So even though there are road markings, but this is an important thing to consider, and sometimes we have to kind of go back to basics. It might seem a very sort of simple exercise, but a lot of it is about the signal. The positioning is okay. We haven't got any issues with this on here, but it's sometimes we have to come back to and consider that signal, don't we? Because we don't always need to give a signal. We know where we're going, but we need to consider others as the main factor when giving signals, so they are helpful and not to confuse or mislead. So a lot of you would say you'd signal right on the approach and cancel at the point that the left, that the lane feeds you to the left. Kevin agrees. Simon, I wouldn't suggest, I think that's
Signal. Yeah, it's interpretive text. It's signal, we should say there.
Yeah,
yeah.
we love predictive text. Come up with all sorts of interesting words. I wouldn't suggest a signal would be necessary. That should have signal. Yeah, we got that. Okay, so Simon's suggesting that he doesn't think a signal's necessary. Okay. So Steve, I've had a pupil fail on tests for not signalling right on the approach to a spiral roundabout, even though lane markings existed. And
that in my view would be the case, because the highway code does not dictate differences between roundabouts that are light controlled or what type of roundabout they are or anything else. It just says on the approach to a roundabout, you should be signalling in the direction you intend to go if a signal is necessary to communicate to other people. So it's irrespective of the lane markings, irrespective of lights that controls the flow of the traffic, irrespective of what type of roundabout it is, you treat it as if the lights weren't there and you'd be putting the signal on the approach.
Okay, there are a couple that are sort of suggesting that they perhaps wouldn't signal on the approach at this point, but I think, like you say, Howard, you need to consider what the highway code rules say. Even though the lanes will feed you naturally round, that just, you know, that's better in helping position people around the roundabout. If you're signalling right on the approach and you maintain the signal until you're about to come off, that could be a little bit more helpful than if you approached a roundabout with no signal and then thought, actually, I'm going around to the right, and then pop the signal on. That's then going to start to confuse people, because they're going to think, what, are you changing lanes halfway around? Or, you know, which people might well do. So that then would start to create more of an issue. So Kevin's signal right on the approach, cancels lane splits, left signal to exit, but not much time to put this on. Yeah, signal should not be.
No, as long as you've got that, when you're leaving, I always say to the students when I was training learners, you always signal at the junction prior to the one you require, and they tend to get it on the right time.
And it rhymes as well. Nice.
Yeah, that's right. It's easy to remember. Signal when you leave a roundabout, signal at the junction prior to the one you require, and they tend to remember it and get it right every time.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I think we've done this one now. So that was just a little warm up. The next little video we're going to show you is, I'm not going to tell you what it is at the moment. This is a question that we want to ask you. So we are coming up to this road here, and we want to ask you what the significance of the orange bollards are. Not the cones that you're seeing on the right at the moment. In a moment, you'll see some orange bollards on both sides of the road and around the roundabout, and what that could mean. Okay, so Tom has asked, aren't they isolated lines for cyclists brought in by COVID? Cycle lanes, yep. So you all spotted the, which we'd expect, you'd all spotted the cycle lane signs and also the road markings. Steve, yeah, so temporary COVID cycle lanes. Yeah, so that's what they are. We've described, and I think Howard, you described them as a pop-up. I don't think it's an official term necessarily.
Yeah,
but
it's the official term for it is pop-up cycle.
Oh, it is, right.
And
okay.
The thing is, they don't all take the same guise. If you go from where we filmed this, you go up to the next town north of Gatwick, a place called Horley. These bollards you can see on the left here, these guides don't exist. It's literally just the marking in the road with the cycle lane. So they come up in many guises, but they are popping up, and they're popping up really, really quickly. The government is really trying to get people to keep, well, when they had lockdown, to keep off the public transport. So these things are popping up pretty quickly. So you can expect widths of roads to change really quickly in your area fairly soon, because nearly every area in the country is shortly going to have these about.
Yeah, the other thing as well is since lockdown in my local area, which is in Sutton, in the town centre, those of you who might know that area know the one-way system, and also some of the local towns surrounding in the borough, you're seeing more and more like almost like pop-up walking, like extra space on the for pedestrians, and you're seeing sort of COVID-19 signs and things like that. So what they're doing is reducing the width of the road, or sometimes taking out a lane to give pedestrians more space to socially distance when they're walking. So this was just, we spotted this, we just thought we'll share this with you because it's quite useful. In case you've not come across this before in your area, and to give you a heads up to say, you know, look out for them, in case your pupils say, you know, I was out driving the other day and I noticed this, and you're like, what was that? So you might say now, if you haven't come across these before, yeah, pop-up cycle lanes. And
they come under the Town Planning and Miscellaneous Provisions Act, so not under the Highways Act at the moment, which is why they don't show in the Highway Code. And the Town Planning and Miscellaneous Provisions Act is an act that was passed in 1968 for local authorities to be able to take control of road networks on a temporary basis if required. It was also to help with the movement of taxis and people at times of need. So these things are not likely to be in the Highway Code. So they might actually disappear in a few years' time. So they are managed by the local authority, and that is why they don't all look exactly the same.
No, but interesting though, because you know, it's you know, just as I say, an interesting point. Some of you, quite a few of you, have said, right, I've seen these around. They're all over the place in my area, but where I live, I haven't seen any of these specifically, but I've seen the ones been around quite a while for pedestrians. So you know, due to COVID and due to things, we are seeing sort of more of these pop up cycle and pedestrian lanes. So it's just interesting. Simon says, nice to know that now there's quite a few around the Midlands area as well. So yeah, they're as you say, they're popping up all over the place. So okay, cool. I don't think there's anything much else we wanted to add on that one, is there, Howard? So we'll move on to the next one. So just pause there a minute, Tom. Okay, so this one, obviously we're going along a dual carriageway. We are going to be taking the slip road up there to the left in a moment and heading down that slip road. Howard, did you want to throw the question in for this one?
What we're looking for here is for you to observe what signs you see along this fairly long slip road. And when we get to the end of the slip road, we'll ask you a couple of questions. So if you want to carry on, Tom, please. So we're coming off left now, off of a dual carriageway, and you can see the slip road immediately goes into a right and the left lane, which has got markings really early in the slip road to advise which lane to get into. As we're coming down this slip road here, the film seems to slow down a little bit here, I don't know why, but there you've got an advanced give way sign. And we look at all the markings here in the road where left should go left and right should go right. If you just want to play the film on a second, Tom. Now we can see the van is actually turning right from the wrong lane. Didn't realise there's a one-way street. Now the thing is that we come about here is we'd like your views on that, because the markings clearly state that people should turn right there. But is it mandatory? That's what we want to get from you. Is that actually a mandatory thing in the highway code for people in the right lane with that marking have got to turn right, and people in the left lane have got to turn left? Let's have your comments, please. So Tom is saying yes, absolutely, yes. Sandra, I think it would be. Mandatory, right, okay. It isn't mandatory, believe it or not. Under the Highways Act, sorry, the Highways Act, those markings are suggestions. So whenever you see an arrow painted in the road that is not accompanied by the words turn right or turn left, depending on the direction of the arrow, or is not accompanied by a sign that is a mandatory sign ordering you to turn that direction, then the painted markings in the road are not obligatory. They are only a situation of suggesting that that's the road space you should take. Now, this is something you need to be careful with now with the students on the road, because with these pop-up lanes that have come out for the bikes, the road space has changed and some of the markings are still showing where painted markings where the lanes used to be. So therefore, this is why they haven't all been wiped out, is because the council thought we're not going to spend the time wiping them out because they are not mandatory. There's no signs accompanying them. So they've left them down, and they can leave them down because they are suggestions only. Now, I've got a question here. I suppose you'd fail the test for that. It would depend on the van turning right on how much inconvenience he had given to other people and whether the judgment of crossing the road is in front of us was actually done properly, with the actual turnout of the emerge from the junction was done properly with proper judgment. The examiner would certainly bank that as a driving fault, may or may not mark it down. I'd imagine they would mark that down because Tom, who's driving this car, was forced to slow down at the junction early. So in other words, it's made him stop, slow down or swerve. And the examiners are told that if any of the pupils have to do that for another, if the pupils force somebody else to stop, slow down or swerve due to their actions, it's normally a planning and anticipation fault. And therefore the examiner's got to consider whether it should be marked. So that's what would be happening there. So has anybody got anything else on that? So Tom, if you'd like to move on, if you could. I think we've probably just got that one there. Now, I believe what we're doing here is we're turning right after the bridge to go back onto the dual carriageway.
Okay, so we're clearly on a different road again.
Oh, all right.
At the moment on this one. We've just sort of sewn some video footage together, so that's why we're jumping from one to the next. So this one is, we'd like to draw your attention to the centre reservation along this dual carriageway, and have a little watch in a moment. And the question we've got for you is, number one, what do you spot along the centre of the road? What is it? And if you were at the next roundabout we're going to take, because we're actually coming back to the same roundabout that we saw in the first clip where we did the right turn, the lane split. But at this roundabout, we are going to be taking the second exit following the road straight ahead. Actually, I don't think we are in the video, but the question is, if we were, how would you be affected? Would you be affected in any way by what is up the centre of the road? So let's, if I talk anymore, I'll give the game away. So Tom, if you could play. Okay, so Tom's actually going to be looking like he's going to do a right turn at this one. But if you were in lane 2 in the middle to follow the road ahead, that's what we want to work out from you. So first of all, what is it in the centre of the lane, which we can see going through the roundabout ahead? And if you were going to take the exit, you can see at 12 o'clock, how could you be affected potentially? You could be maybe potentially lane 2 or 3 for straight over. I can't. I'm saying this, Tom's telling you, right, because I can't honestly remember. But okay, so Sandra said a cycle lane, hamburger roundabout. Kevin said cycle lane. Look at the width of it and consider what other types of vehicles could be using that. I don't know if you can see, there is a road, there is a, where you go through, in the front of that bus, you will see the road going straight ahead where Tom, thank you, Tom. There's a subtle hint by the cursor there. There is no entry, sorry, that tickled me. No entry signs going across. It's a little bit hard to see, but what does that say?
Kevin and Sandra have got it.
Yeah. Seems to be a bus lane. Yeah.
The area that's around Gatwick has a system of guided buses, which allows them to go in certain places that other traffic can't. And they also exist in Newcastle as well.
Yeah.
And they go right through the middle of that roundabout. So the question is, what connotations are there to the people on the other side of the roundabout that go through these lights that we're about to move away from?
So if you could play the film, Tom.
This is the start of the next clip.
Oh, sorry. Right. Oh, goodness. Right. I'll tell you what then. We do have another clip of us going straight on at this roundabout. So, all right, we'll put this one on ice for a moment and we'll come back to that. But do you guys want to see this couple, if we rewind a couple of seconds, do you want to see that again so you can see the clues coming up to where this centre bus lane starts? Okay, yeah, okay, Tom, could you just go back a few seconds, please? So that's it. So on the right hand side now, you can see where a bus would start to enter that area.
Can you just see the bus sign on the top of the post as well?
Yeah.
So the buses are now going down the guided lane to our right, similar to the bus you could see on the right hand side of the road. It's the same type of bus. So it goes through and it's all guided as what's called a fast way. And these are starting to pop up in the larger towns and cities around the country.
And sometimes they have like, as you say, they're guided. So sometimes because they're quite narrow, they have like little wheels on the sides of the bus to kind of push off the curb so they can stay within, it's almost like a little rail for them. So you might see those on buses, or your pupils might say, what on earth is that? So it's to do with this. So, right, okay.
A question from Tom saying that these buses are controlled by lights. They're controlled this side of the roundabout. What happens is when those lights we can see go green, they go right through. But the problem is now I've actually had a student whose father was T-boned by the bus on the other side of that roundabout and nearly killed him. And that was when the lights went out of phase and everybody was moving at the same time, including the bus, and the bus went through through his car, nearly killed him. So yes, they are light controlled, but things can go wrong. So in this situation here, we don't assume we've got right of way because we've got a green light, because a green traffic light means stop if the way, go if the way is clear. So if you can clearly see the way is not going to be clear, then you've got to do something about it. So it's another thing here, learning point for your students really, that just because they have a green light in front of them doesn't mean to say that they are actually going to have the right of way.
Oh, sorry, Howard.
No,
sorry.
Go on.
I was just going to say, I've got a personal experience, not of buses, but of trams in Croydon many years ago. And I was going around a large roundabout, similar to this, but where the tram goes through the centre of the roundabout. The light was green. I had a car behind me, I think, was in front of me. I can't remember. There was a car either in front or behind. The light was green. That's right, the car in front, I'd one in front, one behind. The one in front went through the green light, narrowly missed the tram that was in the right-hand blind spot. But you could see it because you're going round the roundabout and you can just look to your right and you should have seen it, but a tram was there. And then I've stopped, and then obviously the car behind hadn't seen it and nearly sort of run up into the back of me. But if I hadn't have stopped, I wouldn't be sat here right now. You know, again, it's another useful lesson in traffic lights. You know, you know, I know we all teach, don't trust the green light. You know, you've got to look and still look. Lights can go out of phase. People can jump the lights. All sorts of things can happen. Emergency vehicles as well is another prime example, might be coming through. So it's just these things do happen. So we don't want to depress you all too much, but it's just an interesting couple of points to make.
While you're talking about emergency vehicles there, if you will, Olivia, I'm an ex-firefighter myself, and one thing I'd like to share with you is that not so long ago, on the fire engines especially, there was a faulty set of sirens put on many fire engines in the local authority areas, which when we were told to go on a shout, we were sometimes told to go silent running. And the reason we went silent running is because we knew when we heard that the ambulance was already on site of where we were going to, because our sirens, when we put them on, the wailers, would push out a pulse through the air, which produced an electrical pulse called an EMF. And this, about a quarter of a mile ahead of the appliance, would turn into a frequency that was very close to the same frequency that could turn off someone's pacemaker. So if we went with our sirens on, we would kill the person that the ambulance is trying to save. And that was a faulty set of things that were put on fire appliances that wasn't noted until about 1997, when they'd been around for about 10 years. And some appliances have still got them. So don't assume that all fire engines or ambulances or police cars are going to go through those lights with sirens on. They won't always do it. And this is why I say again with your students, a green light means go if the way is clear. Now, if they go through a green light and they hit an emergency vehicle that is actually crossed through the red and treat the red as a give way, but they are hit, if it went to court, the chances are that the student would be blamed for going through a green light when the way wasn't clear. That's what it'd fall down on.
Yeah,
and 9 times out of 10, that has been exactly the same.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Okay, let's have a little look at the next clip. So this one is more like when to signal, what signal would you give? So if you could play the tape, listen to me, play the film. Show my age. I think this one comes to an end in a few seconds, but you can see there that grey car to the left having go through there. If a bus is coming through, you can see the problem if you're not looking. Okay, so that one there was as we were approaching, so it's kind of 2 in 1, that one. So as we were back at those traffic lights, sitting looking at the bus lane going through the centre of the roundabout, we were turning right. Again, it's a very similar question to the first one, the first clip we saw. Would you give a signal on the right as we approach? I think we've established we would do generally to help others out. Would you do anything different on that one? Is there any differences that you can see? It's not a trick question. It was just, is there anything that you can spot that we haven't, for example, as to why you wouldn't signal on the approach? And again, it's another example of that sort of multi-directional lane that splits. So again, it's very careful timing of the left signal to exit at the right time. So if anyone's got any questions on that, or any comments to add on that particular one. I think it was fairly straightforward and it's a repeat of the first one really. What we were hoping for when we were going out to film this was, you know, some other people like the driver in the van. So that was a good example, because we were like, great, you know, we've got something. It's a bit like, this is why they went to CGI clips for the theatre, for the has a perception, so they can, you know, they can generate incidents and things that happen. But when you're out filming, if everyone's doing everything they should do, which is great, obviously it doesn't generate as much discussion. So okay, let's move on to the next one then. So this one is a left at a roundabout. Hold on a minute, Tom, just pause. I'm just trying to remember the clip myself here for a moment. Okay, so I think this is a left. Are you doing a left turn at this one?
The third exit on this one.
Third exit, okay. Yeah. Okay, third exit to the right. And again, okay, let's play this one. Again, considering signals for where we're going. Again, it's the same roundabout. And this one now, you can see now that bus lane that comes up the centre. And you can see the points we were discussing and the reasons why. If these lights are green, it would be so easy for a novice driver to think, okay, lights are green, I'm gonna go. But we can see the issues with that. So where you've got these roundabouts in your area, obviously you would be training people to look out for this. I don't think there's anything else to add on that one, because we have discussed this one fairly well, unless anyone's got any questions. Okay, all right, so I think we're on to the next one now then, Tom. I believe the next one is where we are going. Okay, so it's almost the same road that we saw in the first clip. So at this next roundabout, we are going to be taking the first exit left, I believe. And there is a little slip road. There is a little road prior to just getting to the roundabout, which you can use also to turn left. But in this occasion, Tom has ignored that. Maybe he's gone in the wrong way. Maybe he thought, oh, can I use that? And he's gone up to the stop line, waited behind the silver car. So you've just gone past the opportunity to go left there. He's indicating left, and you will take the first exit. So how would, for example, on a test, how would an examiner, is that a problem, first of all? And how would an examiner view this? How would they mark it? Would they mark it? Would they just consider it, maybe bank it, because they don't have to mark all the faults? Does anyone want to see that again to consider? You're right, Tom. It's not ideal, but there's nothing illegal in it. And when we were discussing it the other day, if somebody, this is a classic example, isn't it, on an independent drive, or for example, where an examiner said, okay, I'd like you to take the first exit at the roundabout. They've got this opportunity to go left. For whatever reason, they haven't taken it, but they've correctly mirrored, signalled, and they do what they do here. So they've gone wrong correctly. So is there anything to mark? No, not really. No, there isn't. Marked for lack of planning. Has it had an impact on anybody else? Did that affect any other drivers on this example that we've seen, I realise we can't see what's behind us and what's to the side, but let's assume, well, in truth as well, there wasn't anything that you know, Tom didn't impact anyone else, any other drivers around at the time. So if that's the case, and we're assuming, and we know that's the answer no, yeah, and obviously the first lane would be preferable, absolutely. So that was just an example of that, and where that could have gone right or wrong. I don't think there's anything else to add on that one. That was just a little example of what we could find. Okay, we've got another couple of clips, and then we've got a couple of still images for you as well. So this one here, this is interesting. Just talk you through it very quickly. We are going down to a lane which is a dedicated lane for a slip road ahead, and we can see down there on the left there's a big sign to say there's a roundabout. So as we come down here, we are going to be turning left at the roundabout, which is the first exit. Is there anything wrong with what we do? So we're indicating left at the moment. There are giveaway lines, they're very, very faded. The road marking is very poor on this roundabout. So anything wrong with that? Is the question. We'll play it for you again. Thank you. So we have the arrows there, and you notice there we're in a lane that says straight ahead and right. The lane to the left has got a left arrow, but from earlier they're advisory, and we can legitimately turn left because this lane feeds into going left. And it doesn't go anywhere else, if you notice. There isn't an option really to go round to the right.
So again, it's a gone wrong correctly, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it is poor. It is kind of poor planning. But the other situation that a driver could potentially find themselves in is if there was maybe an obstruction in the left-hand lane, or what if somebody consciously made that decision to do that because there was traffic, or you know, the left-hand lane was held up for some you know, an obstruction, as I say, for some reason, and he used the right-hand lane there to on the approach to go left deliberately because maybe you knew the area. Would that be an issue? Martin's come back with a, and Sandra straight away no. Yeah, again, as you say, Simon, realistically, ideally we want to be in that left-hand lane because it is, and I can't remember who's up the conversation, someone's used the word, it's more efficient because, yeah, you don't have to stop necessarily. There isn't a give way, but obviously all the same observations and precautions still need to be taken because, as you could see, there were people, you know, coming across from the right-hand side, changing lanes. And because of the road markings were virtually non-existent along the centre there was a chevron, there was a lane marking there to keep traffic lanes separate, but they're almost disappeared. And so you could, you know, possibly forgive a driver for not seeing that because you can't see them very well. Okay, lovely. Let's have a look at the last video clip, and this is a question on, we're going to have another couple of questions on this roundabout. We've got some still images which we can go through with you again in a moment, but this one is, what should you do what are the risks to you? You are following the road ahead in the centre lane, and what are the you know, apart from the traffic coming around from the right, because we can't see that, but we'll assume when Tom goes, it's safe to go. We trust his driving. What are the risks to you, and how could you manage those? Eliminate them or reduce them entirely? So let's have a little watch and see what we think. It's quite useful, the video going slow like that, because it helps us to gives us a bit more time to consider. So Tom wasn't expecting that, in terms of, you wasn't expecting us to take that exit, you was expecting us to take the next one perhaps. Was there anything wrong with what we did as well, as an additional question? So the question is, what are the risks to us at this moment? Like now, what are the risks to us, and what could we do? What do we normally train to try and eliminate that? Yeah, so Martin, that silver vehicle on the left, he was a little bit near to the centre line, plus perhaps on it. So that was more the imminent danger from that vehicle. Let's watch it one more time. So you notice how close to the lane that vehicle comes, and I know we can't see it, but that silver car went off at the first exit. So the left-hand side of the car is now clear. But what do we normally do? What do we normally train to help? What would we do in that situation? Say that silver car followed us around the roundabout. What would we do to try and prevent taking each other out? What's best practice in ways where you've got lanes each side of you, vehicles each side of you? Yeah, don't sit in the blind spot. Simon, you're right to be concerned about that vehicle, that silver vehicle on our left. So staggering, we stagger ourselves a little bit, so we're not exactly side by side when we go around. We try to keep a little bit in front, perhaps drop back a little tiny bit if conditions allow, just so we are not, you know, side by side. If they don't sort of look across, we might be in the blind spot if we are just side by side or just a fraction behind them. Yeah, so Steve, don't sit in the blind spot. Nina, yeah, so depending on speed, yeah. So either, yeah, the conditions allow, a little bit in front, drop back a little bit, so, and we stagger ourselves a little bit as we go around. And Nina's asked if we could play one more time. Is that right, Tom?
I'm going to ask you to remember the entrance to the roundabout with that silver car there, if you will, because it comes into play in a few minutes' time when we do the still shots.
So Nina's asked, what's the road marking for the left lane on the approach to the roundabout? Good question. Hold that for a minute. We're going to look at, as Howard said, we're going to look at a couple of still shots of that roundabout on the approach. Okay, Simon, so you're also drive coaches? I assume from that comment?
Yes, Sandra, you're correct. The silver car would have been in the correct lane to have gone off in the lane that we went off as well, because it was a multi-directional lane to take the first or second exit from that lane, from that entrance.
Yeah. Again, these roundabouts, they've you know, they're multi-lane, multi-directional, and so they're often very fast as well. You know, because they're large roundabouts, drivers and other road users can come around them at quite some speed sometimes. So they're quite intimidating for, say, a novice driver, learner drivers, but they are absolutely essential in your training. So they're not sometimes not the nicest things to deal with sometimes, but essential as a driver. So if you've got any of these in your area, you'll be out.
Tom has just come up with a point here, actually, which you talk about for a minute. He said if they intended both lanes to exit that exit, I think they would have 2 lanes on the exit. But just bear in mind now, Tom, we've now got the pop-up cycle lanes. So where you'd expect to have the 2 lanes going off and exit, because 2 lanes are approaching, excuse me, we're now getting a situation where some of these lanes are disappearing. So we've got to start building a bit more anticipation and trying to look at the limit points of how far ahead we can see in the first place and try to assess what the road's actually doing in the distance, because in some instances, the lanes are disappearing. And that's happening all over the country. That's why we brought up about these pop-up cycle lanes. They are causing a few problems.
Okay, all right. Should we have a little look at the next one then, Tom? We'll have a look at, there's a still image of the approach to that very same roundabout from where we were just, hold on. Oh, hello. Ah, okay, so this shows, right. This shows us going back to that roundabout where we used the other lane to go round, where we went left. Okay, no worries.
Now, if you can just take that back, Tom.
Oh, sorry, yes, sorry, I stand corrected. Yeah, carry on, Howard. I've just realised while we're playing this clip.
We've got now where Tom went wrong correctly on the exit, where he didn't take the slip to the left on the dual carriageway here. He went and took the middle lane, and we took the right lane and went round. You can see from the roundabout sign that there's clearly a filter that goes across to exit 1, first exit. Okay, so and it is actually not designated. It's suggested that we go down the slip road, but you can go straight on to go and do second exit in that roundabout as well. Now, if you move the film forward and stop it again at the corner, if you can, please, Tom. So we go ahead now and going to enter into the slip road to the left. I know the film's a bit delayed here. So let's just come around. Stop there, please, if you will. Okay. Well, we can see the lights are green. Okay. Now then, we can clearly see the push boxes for pedestrians on that crossing there. But the problem we have there is that the green light makes people think that they can go straight through and go straight into the carriageway without, if you can just hold that there if you can, Tom, they think they've got access into the main carriageway. Now, if you look at this pedestrian crossing here, there are no zigzags. We've got to be careful with these pedestrian crossings. Pedestrian crossings that don't have zigzags are junction controlled crossings. Yes, they've got push buttons on the posts, but they are junction controlled. There's a computer box because it's linked to the roundabout. So what they've done is they've ensured that the traffic is completely stopped, because if you look to the right behind the van, the people can cross in front of us and then go across where the van is. So it's all linked to the roundabout, all the lights on the roundabout. So there's a computer that when someone pushes a button on one of those push boxes, it sends a signal to the computer that they want an interruption in the traffic flow. So the box then reads all of the sensors that are in the road, collates where most of the traffic is, and then puts in a pedestrian sequence. Now, when you've got zigzags on the approach to a crossing, they are pedestrian controlled, which means that the lights that are being pushed are linked to the sensors in the road or the sensors on top of the lights for that road only. So the pedestrian can push it. There's only one lot of sensors he's checking. The lights will change and the pedestrian will cross. Because these are junction controlled, it could be that they are timed to put in a pedestrian sequence and no one's got to be there. because it could be a busy junction for the crossing of pedestrians as well as the crossing of motor vehicles. So not always are you going to have someone standing on the crossing there in this instance to press that button. So we must never assume that because we're going to a green light, especially at a pedestrian crossing where there's no zigzags, we cannot assume that that light's going to stay green, because it's controlled by a timer on the junction box. Now, there's a lot of ADIs that fall cropper with this, who don't train this sort of stuff. And I know from the DVSA that the DVSA have had, they don't have a lot of instances of failed tests on this, but it's where planning and awareness comes into situation, and also actually the box on pedestrian crossings, that the student has had to react late because no one's at the crossing. They've assumed they can keep going straight through. The lights have been green for a long time, therefore they could change at any time because they're on a timer on a junction box. They assume someone's going to push that button, but it's not pedestrian controlled. And we've got to be careful of this. So I've brought that up here, but if you look at those lights there, they can be misconstrued to think that you've got priority to go straight into that dual carriageway, and you actually haven't. It is a white line there for the crossing only. So as soon as those lights, as soon as you cross that white line, you have to give way and merge in to the main carriageway. And if we move this on now, we should see that this lane 1 that we join is actually a slip road into a superstore. So we've got the normal line markings at the moment. And as we go down the road here, look at the sign. It's a designated lane to a superstore. So traffic are going to cross each other. So we've got to be incredibly careful that we don't misconstrue those lights as a free-for-all to join the carriageway, because they're not. And there's several places around the country that are like that. And the DVSA, they can't tell the student to be careful on the test. They've got to assume they're going to test with the full confidence and competence to be able to read all road situations, and they're not going with that information. Any questions? Now, this is why I urge you now. We've got this problem with tests at the moment, with this Lincoln Great waiting list we've had. This is why the DVSA keeps saying, make sure your students are ready for these tests, because if they fail, they've got an awful long time to wait for the next one. So they must go ready.
And this is also a really important point to raise on that, about when you test ready, you need to be ready for any area, any test centre. If you can't get your local one, then you need to be ready and be able to deal with any area. So, you know, the further out, the more diverse you can make your routes, your training, the better, because obviously enriches that pupil's experience of driving. And that's the main thing, encourages that road safety perspective, and that's first and foremost, but it will also help with things like this as well. So they are pedestrian request, those lights. Okay, now I think that was the final video clip we've got for you. The next one, we've got 2 stills of the previous roundabout, so the one where we were talking about the silver car up our left-hand side. So we'll get to that in just a moment.
Now this is the roundabout that we were at earlier on with the silver car to the side of us. And you can clearly see from this still shot that the approach lanes do not line up with the lanes in the roundabout. And that is why that car on the silver car on the left of us was really quite close to our car, because the guy, when he approached that roundabout, he looked to the right and he didn't look to see where he had to place the vehicle. We have to train the students to divide their attention between what's coming from the right and where have they got to place the vehicle. And this is a perfect example. And when there's a bridge that Tom stood on top of to take this photograph, that I asked him to do, because when I was training in that area, when I lived in that area, I used to take my students to this exact position to show this exact example and stand them up there, because these approach markings and approach lanes don't meet up with the roundabout. They don't meet up what's in there. So everyone is out of line. And whenever I was on that bridge showing these students what to do, we always without failed, heard someone sound their horn because someone was in the wrong place. There's a perfect example. So this, if ever you've got to try and reiterate to anybody, any of your students, why they've got to divide their attention, this is the reason for it. You can only really see it from up high. And look at the lane 1 approach, the red car there, look, very nearly, or the guy between him and the guy who's just left the middle lane there, very nearly an altercation there, look. And it happens all the time. So we can't really see from this angle like this. When you're down at road level, you can't see that those don't line up. So you know, you're not going to know. So we have to approach every roundabout as if they don't line up. So when we're trying to find out that what's coming from the right, don't allow your students to look to the right for a prolonged amount of time. We often say, memorize the curve in the road, join the roundabout, look to the right. We can't do that. We've got to divide the attention so they can then gather the information of where the vehicle has to be in the roundabout. And the examiners in Crawley love this roundabout. If they're going to be unsure about something, most of the tests that fail in Crawley are at this junction or at the roundabout outside the test centre, because it's the roundabout above the M23. So you come straight at the test centre, and within about less than a quarter of a mile, they're on a motorway roundabout, and they've got to cope. And that's why Crawley is the third hardest test centre in the whole of the country.
Let's add on to that, when you're training our pupils, looking to the right, dividing your attention to look forward, we're not only just looking for the position of the lanes where we're going to be going next, anticipating the moves of the other vehicles around you. So if you were that grey Nissan in that centre lane there, and you know, you might be thinking, well, you know, you probably at that angle you can't see the red car because he's in your blind spot, but the other thing you'd have to bear in mind is the most junctions, the most common type of crash at a roundabout is rear end collisions, because people are only looking to the right. So there's looking to the right, which pupils will often assume that that's the bulk of what they have to do, but it's a very quite an even split. Looking to the right, looking to the left, where have you got to go, planning ahead, looking for other people, and also making sure you're maintaining that gap in front of you. I don't have the average pass rate annually in Crawley, probably be able to look it up on gov.uk, Tom, but I haven't got that figure to hand at this moment.
It's 43%.
43, well, it's, yeah, okay, I don't know about Crawley. Is that for Crawley?
That's Crawley. Crawley's 43%.
Okay, all right. I didn't have that in front of me at this time. Okay, I think that's yeah. Those are the clips. So this was the second of the 2 clips. So there's still images to discuss to make that point about the lanes not lining up. Quite often, this was my route to work, and I would be where the red car is. And taking the second exit in that far left-hand lane. So not only do you have the threat of vehicles from the middle lane coming over, you've also got where you pass the first exit, where you can now see the blue car waiting to emerge. I'm coming off at the next exit. Those cars sometimes there assume you're coming off at exit 1. Sometimes they don't look again. If you watch the driver's face, they don't look back. They see you coming around. They think you're going to go off at that exit. They assume it's safe to go. And the number of times where people have gone to pull out in front of me, where I'm now indicating left, I'm coming round. So speed is a real consideration. You don't want to be taking that too quickly, because you need to give other people warning where you're going to be going. A quick toot on the horn, or as we do, we just watch that driver. Have they looked back at us? Have they given us that confirmation that they've seen us? And have we signalled in time, given the right signal at the right place, in order to give that communication to others so they know where we're going.
Steve has got a question about the spiral roundabouts. He says, on spiral roundabouts, what is the thoughts on signalling? If you were turning right at a spiral roundabout, say 4 o'clock position, when your lane starts to spiral away from the roundabout, what should you do with your signal if you're already signalling right on the approach? The spiral lane is moving you away from the roundabout gradually to the left towards your exit, but you have a right turn signal on. Now, the situation with this, Steve, is that we mentioned earlier on, is that in the main, on spiral roundabouts, most of those roundabout lanes in the roundabout are multi-directional. So they tend to be where there are more exits anyway. The one example we used had 5 exits on it. So quite often they are multi-laned directional lanes, and therefore you'll be signalling your intention on the approach to do your 4 o'clock exit, and keeping that signal on, even if you're moving out to the left, keep the right turn signal on until the exit of the exit to the one, so exit prior to the one you require, and then put on your left signal. And whether you've got the guided markings to take you to that left exit or not, the reason you're putting the signal on to leave the roundabout is to tell people around you where you're going, but also the people coming onto the roundabout at the entrance of where you're leaving at your 4 o'clock, that you're not going to cross their path. So it gives them the opportunity to get on the roundabout. So your signal for leaving is important to tell people trying to get on the oncoming carriageway that you're not going to cross their path. So you're communicating. So the signal should go on the approach, and you should keep that roundabout, that signal on in the roundabout, because as we said at the beginning, the highway code does not differentiate between a spiral roundabout or a normal roundabout, whether it's light controlled or otherwise. It says you should signal your intention on the approach to the roundabout to show people your exit. And you keep the signal on if you're turning right until you get to the exit, the junction, so the exit prior to the one you require. And that's when you would change. So I hope that answers your question.
Okay, well, I think we're going to be starting to wind the session up now. So thank you, everyone, for your attendance today. Great to have so many of you. And we thought we'd try something different. We hope it worked. I mean, what were your thoughts on if we did something like this again in the future? We went out, filmed some things on a dash cam, just for discussion points. Do you enjoy? Because normally our style of webinars to date have been, you know, we give you information. It's more of a presentation where we invite questions, where we share slides and things with you. But we thought, you know what, we'll try something a little bit different today. So yeah, a lot of you have said, yeah, you're all saying yes. Okay, so you like this, you want more. Now the next question is then on that for you to consider. You don't have to answer it now, but always let us know in the training@driving.org email. You can then tell us, or even the support at driving.org, either one, doesn't matter. You can tell us if there's anything specific that you want, and if we can supply that footage, or even if you've got some footage that you would share with us. Obviously we have to be careful of data protection, so we would request no sound, forward facing only, if there is anything like that, because we don't want to hear any, you know, conversations, even though it is on a lesson, it is all professional, but that's, you know, we shouldn't be sharing that. So if there's anything like that, or anything that suggestions you've got that we can go out and we can find, we can film, then let us know. There could be something there. I think that's about it. I don't think there's any other questions at the moment. Dealt with those, and so it sounds like you guys have all quite enjoyed that, learned a couple of bits, and yeah. So I think what would be easier is with Tom, your screen sharing, is perhaps if you wouldn't mind in just a sec, once we're all done, just to close the session down rather than transferring it back to me. That might be good to save. save me doing that. Okay, because it might get a bit messy, you know what we're like. Okay, so Simon, you've asked, have any standard checks taken place yet? Don't believe so at the moment. So more to come on that. If there's any questions that any of you guys have got about, you know, could be anything, then that's why these support emails are there for members. It's a membership only thing. So Howard and I monitor that. So support@driving.org. If you've got a question, then you'd like us to help. Examples of commentary driving would be very useful. Yeah. Okay, Tom. Nice. Thank you. Good suggestion there. We'll put it on the list. Okay, fantastic. So thank you again, guys and girls, and have a good weekend, everyone. And thanks, Tom. Thanks, Howard. And we'll see you again soon.